We live in a world where you can get pretty much anything delivered to your door, like tomorrow. But have you ever stopped to think how people got things from the other side of the planet 2,000 years ago? Well, that's the massive question we're diving into today as we start our incredible journey along the Silk Roads. I mean, seriously, think about it. Right now, there's a giant cargo plane somewhere up there probably flying your next phone from China. We can get anything from anywhere, and it just feels normal. But let's rewind the clock. Picture this. 2,000 years ago, the richest, most powerful people in Rome were showing off their status by wearing beautiful, luxurious silk, which came all the way from China.
But there were no planes, no lorries, no giant container ships. So, how on earth did any of that actually happen?
Well, the answer is the Silk Roads. And trust me, this is way more than just a dusty old history topic. Understanding these ancient roots is actually the key to understanding how our modern connected world was built in the first place. So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start by seeing just how separate the ancient world was. Then we'll look at the absolutely insane obstacle course that stood in the way of connecting it. We'll meet the 5 great empires that made this network happen, dig into a couple of amazing stories, and then, at the end, we'll see what you've learned.
Right, let's kick off with a huge idea from a modern historian that might just change the way you look at history forever.
The historian is Peter Frankopan, and his big idea basically flips everything we think we know about history on its head. He says that for most of human history, the real center of the world wasn't Europe. It wasn't America. It was Central Asia. And as he puts it, if you really want to understand the world, the best place to start is right here, with the Silk Roads. And this map just shows his point perfectly. We're used to seeing maps with Europe plunked right in the middle, right? But look what happens when you shift your focus, when you put Central Asia at the heart of it all. Suddenly you see it as this incredible bridge connecting everything. The world really does look different from the middle.
So, with that in mind, our big question for this whole series is this: how did the Silk Roads shape the world? And today, we're kicking off with the very first piece of that puzzle. Why were they even created? What made them necessary?
To really get why these roads were so special, you first have to understand just how ridiculously difficult they were. It was like nature had set up the world's toughest obstacle course. Okay, just try to imagine you have to get from China to the Mediterranean 2,000 years ago. You'd have to cross some of the most hostile places on Earth. You've got the Himalayas, the literal roof of the world. You've got these huge empty grasslands in Central Asia, where you could freeze to death one minute and bake the next. For centuries, these barriers acted like giant walls, keeping the world's great civilizations totally separate. The emperors in China had no idea the Roman Empire even existed, and it was the same the other way around. And then there was my personal favorite, the Taklamakan Desert. You're gonna love this. Its name in the local language roughly translates to, you go in and you do not come out. I mean, at least they were honest. It's a bit of a joke, but it perfectly captures just how dangerous this journey really was. So, how did it all begin? Well, it started with a problem. Back around 130 BC, the Han Emperor of China, a guy called Emperor Wu, was having a really tough time. He was under constant attack from these fierce warriors from the north, the Xiongnu. To beat them, he knew he needed a military upgrade, bigger, stronger horses. And the rumor was the best horses in the world were way out west, in Central Asia. So, he sent a very brave explorer named Zhang Qian on a mission to go find them. Now, Zhang Qian's journey is one of the greatest adventure stories in history. He heads west and is almost immediately captured by the enemy and held prisoner for 10 years. 10 years. But he never gave up. He eventually escaped and just kept going on his original mission. When he finally made it back to China, the knowledge he brought with him was worth way more than any horse. He hadn't just found horses, he'd found a whole new world out there. And that is the absolute key takeaway. He went looking for horses, but he found a world. His reports of all these different peoples, new goods, and new opportunities, that's what started the slow opening of these trade routes. It was the very beginning of the ancient world being slowly stitched together. Now, it's really important to know that the Silk Roads weren't just one road built by one empire. They were a network, a massive web powered by 5 great civilizations who all wanted something the others had. This table really breaks it down. You had the Han Dynasty in China, who had the most desirable luxury product on the planet, silk. But they were desperate for those powerful horses from the West. At the other end, you had the Roman Empire. They had mountains of gold and silver, but their rich citizens were absolutely obsessed with getting Chinese silk and spices from India. And that simple fact that everyone had something the other wanted was the engine that powered the Silk Roads for more than 1,000 years. And then you've got the Parthian Empire in modern-day Iran. These guys were the ultimate middlemen. They didn't make the silk. They didn't have the gold. They just sat right in between Rome and China and put a tax on every single caravan that passed through their territory. They got super rich just by controlling the route. Pretty clever, right? Of course, absolutely none of this would have been possible without the hero of this story, the ancient world's greatest freight vehicle, the camel. Seriously, these animals are incredible. A single camel can carry up to 200 kilograms, it can survive for weeks without water, and it can just keep on walking through desert heat that would kill a horse in a matter of hours. They were the key that unlocked those great deserts. But these routes carried so much more than silks and spices. They were like highways for ideas, for secrets, and sometimes for something much, much darker. Here are 2 quick stories that really show the surprising impact of the Silk Roads. 3,000. That's how many years China managed to keep the secret of how to make silk. 3,000 years. If you revealed the secret, the punishment was death. People in Rome would wear this incredible fabric, but they had no clue how it was made. One famous Roman writer was absolutely convinced that silk just grew on trees. The secret finally got out around 550 AD when, according to the story, 2 monks smuggled silkworm eggs out of China hidden inside their hollow walking staffs. But there is a much darker side to all of this connection. The exact same routes that carried silk and ideas also carried disease. The Black Death, which absolutely devastated Europe in the 14th century, is now believed to have started in Central Asia. It then traveled west along the Silk Road trade routes, carried by fleas on rats that had hitched a ride on merchant caravans. It's such a powerful reminder. Trade connects the world, but unfortunately, it connects all of it, the good and the bad. Okay, that was a lot to take in, so let's pause for a moment and see what's stuck. Time for a quick knowledge check. Question 1. Which empire first organized the Silk Roads, and who did they send to open up trade routes to the west? Was it A, the Roman Empire and Julius Caesar? B, the Parthian Empire and King Mithridates? C, the Han Dynasty and Zhang Qian? Or D, the Kushan Empire and King Kanishka? The correct answer is C. The Han Dynasty of China sent the explorer Zhang Qian to find horses, which kicked the whole thing off. Question 2. Why did the geography of Asia make the Silk Roads so remarkable? Was it A, because the land was flat and easy to cross? B, because travelers had to overcome huge obstacles like mountains and deserts? C, because there were rivers everywhere for boats? Or D, because the weather was always perfect for travel? The answer is B. The Silk Roads were so amazing precisely because travelers had to cross some of the most hostile terrain on Earth. Question 3. Why were the Parthians so important to the Silk Roads, even though they didn't produce silk themselves? Was it A, they had the best camels? B, they guided all the caravans? C, they controlled the land in the middle and taxed all the trade? Or D, they built all the roads? Yep, it's C. They were the ultimate middlemen, getting rich by taxing every caravan that passed through their territory. Question 4. What were 2 things that the Silk Roads connected beyond just goods and trade? Was it A, oceans and rivers? B, ideas and disease? C, royal families and armies? Or D, the North and South Poles? The correct answer is B. The routes were highways for beliefs like Buddhism to spread, but also for devastating sicknesses like the Black Death. And finally, question 5. Why does historian Peter Frankopan argue that you should start with the Silk Roads to understand the world today? Is it A, because it's the oldest story in history? B, because the connections they created helped build the modern interconnected world? C, because all modern roads are based on them? Or D, because it's the only part of history that matters? The answer is B. He argues that the connections they forged in trade, culture, and ideas are what created the foundations for the globalized world we all live in today. Excellent job. So now we know why the roads were created, but that just leads to more questions, doesn't it? Next time, we'll ask, what was actually traded on the Silk Roads beyond just silk? And what happened when these completely different civilizations met for the very first time? See you then.